What's up, guys? I got the keys here back with another video. So today I kind of want to tell a story of one of my manifestations that I've recently um, realized, and just to kind of give you guys an idea of how this works, right? So, back a few months ago, um, I started picturing myself getting a raise at my job, right? I started picturing myself in the end zone of what would happen if I got that raise, right? And so I assumed the feeling of the person that got the raise while simultaneously imagining my boss telling me I'm doing a great job, et cetera, right? And so I kept picturing this because it was already implanted in my mind now. So, over time I would, casually picture. I wasn't even doing it on purpose all the time. Sometimes it would just come to mind and I would just daydream it or whatever, right? Um, and this is just a big example, right? There's so many things that other things I've manifested, but um, just to show you an idea of how this works, right? So I imagined it. I imagined what would happen, how it would happen, and me being in that moment right there and then. And I pictured it with certainty as I knew it was happening right there in that moment. And so I knew it had to come to fruition because I felt it. I could literally picture myself being in the room with my boss having the conversation. And so the other day he starts the meeting and he says, "We're doing evaluations today because I've been behind on them." So I was supposed to get an evaluation at like 3 months. I've been there for like 6 or so. Um, and so I basically he came up to me first and he was like, "Do you want to do yours first?" And I was like, "Sure, let's do it. Why not?" Right. And you know, meanwhile, I was having all these thoughts of, like what's gonna happen, what's gonna be said, right? I was like, well, it can either go, in one way where he tells me I need to work on something, or it can go the other way where I'm getting a raise, right? And so I pictured the best outcome of getting the raise. And as soon as he calls me in, he's like, "I just wanted to do yours first because there's not really much to say bad about you. You do your work fast. You're great at what you do. You're probably the best and fastest worker I've ever had in this department." And I was like, "Okay, great." And he's like, "So we're gonna up your pay to this, and then we're also gonna give you another dollar at the end of the year." And I was like, "Oh." I was like, "Great." I was like, "That's awesome." I was like, "That sounds good to me." Um, And the overwhelming feeling of like, I did it in that moment felt so good, right? But I already knew the feeling because I felt it in my imagination before when I did my meditation on it. And um it was almost surreal to like have it happen almost identically to how I imagined it, right? Now it wasn't, it's not exact, obviously. We don't know how the universe is going to bring it, but it was amazing to get this exact dollar amount that I was like imagining myself having, right? Um, and I was honestly surprised, like that this really, came true. And it's just amazing how this stuff really works in, once you start paying attention. Um, and how, even the little things that, especially when you've detached, you're not worried about how it comes because it's yours. You're not worried about the how, the why, the who, all of that, right? Because that's the way that you've embodied the person that gets the thing, right? Because you're not, if you already had the thing, you wouldn't be asking where it is. You wouldn't be, trying to do more meditations on it. You wouldn't be trying to force it into your life anymore, right? You would simply keep living life now that you've already envisioned it, you've put it in your mind, and you know it's yours, right? So to me, this was like a big step in understanding myself more. And um, although it may not be a big manifestation for some people, for me, it was like, wow, I actually did this. Like I could see how I did it. And this isn't the only thing, like I've said, this isn't the only thing that's happened, but just to give you a really good example of how this works. Right. Now I took actions. So I'm not just saying just to sit there and imagine, but I was doing my job. I was there early. I stayed. I take shorter lunches. I get stuff done. I'm fast, right? Um, so I'm still a hard worker, right? Like, but that's not what defines my monetary value at the same time. Like my worth comes from within me. So naturally, the world had to align to match that frequency, right? Um, and even looking back, 2 years ago or a year and a half ago when I was complaining about my job, I didn't want to be there. Um, they weren't paying me well, they weren't treating me well. Um, it all led me to what I was envisioning, right? It led me to this job. Um, and all of that was meant to show me things about myself. And I can understand, even in those moments when I was going through it and I didn't want to be there, I understood that I was there for a reason and to learn something, especially about myself and breaking another pattern of something that was holding me back. So, and ultimately, that was rediscovering my worth and standing up for myself and regaining my self respect of saying, "Hey, I'm not going to take your bullshit, right? I'm worth more than this." And it's not just money, right? It's like me as a person is worth more than this job treating me the way that it does. And not, like I said, not just pay. Pay was obviously shit too, but I was grateful to even have something, right? Because I've been without a job before and I know what that's like. So, every moment of my life taught me something, from being jobless to almost losing my apartment to getting, this job that I couldn't really stand much, but I did it for a year or so. Um, and eventually it got to the point where they had to let me go because they couldn't afford to pay me. Basically, I was one of the highest paid there, so they couldn't afford it anymore. They weren't getting clients like they were supposed to. Um, so it's funny how the universe worked this out. But then there was another job that I was already talking to, planning on leaving this job because I was, working on getting out. And um, ultimately, I literally got the text the day of me figuring out that he was going to be, letting me go. He told me I could look for another job and stuff, right? But I already had a job. So that job texted me the same fucking day, guys. Um, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna hand in my pass today. I'm done. I'm just gonna quit. I didn't say nothing. I just put my pass on my bluffing cart and my parking pass. And I just let it go. And I just said, he'll find it tomorrow. He'll see that I'm not coming back. And it was really funny too because he actually texted me the same night and said, you don't have to come in tomorrow because we're not going to have much work. And I obviously didn't reply because I quit. You know what I mean? So um, I'm not going to be disrespected like that. And regardless of if you don't have money, you don't just fire people out of the blue. Um, but that's just my opinion, and everything worked out perfectly. So I'm not going to sit here and say it was wrong or whatever, right? But it's just amazing how that all lined up to get me to here, right? And then, I was at that job for a little bit and I wasn't seeing much of, progress. I wasn't seeing any ability to make more money there. And I was told I was doing good and all, but I wasn't getting any raises. I wasn't getting any, I wasn't allowed to work overtime more than 3 hours, I think he said. which I found like hilarious. And I'm just like, okay, so you don't want me to work overtime and get cars done so that you can make money. And so then I ended up, started thinking about a better shop with, better people and better pay and all that. And then that job lined up for me naturally, right? I started imagining myself in that place and I started living as that person. Like even in the job that I was at, I started doing, I was still doing good work, like regardless of, it was a Mako. So, um, I still did my best work. I still acted like I was the person making a higher dollar amount than what I was. And so the universe had to align me with something that matched me, right? And so it brought me this job. And then, like I said, I started imagining myself at this certain dollar amount, and here I am. So it goes to show you how powerful you actually are as a creator, right? And even beyond creating it, right? You're actually choosing a version of yourself at every moment, because like I said, there's multiple versions of you in the field. Because time is not linear as we picture it. There's a version of you that's rich, there's a version of you that's poor, there's a version of you that is happy, there's a version of you that's sad. Um, and so there's so many different aspects of yourself that you can experience and you're choosing it. Um, Now you could say you're creating, it's the same idea, but depends on how your perspective works. Um, but with that being said, guys, it's like reality is not as hard to manipulate as you think. But the challenging part is going through the bridge of events, right? The things that you have to go through to get to those things. Because it's not always direct, like, hey, this is popping up in my reality. So, it's not like it's just poof and it's there. But it takes work, it takes strength, it takes discipline, it takes consistency, and resilience mostly, to just keep going, excuse me, no matter what. um and so I'm here, doing this. And if you are in any way looking to change that, if you are looking to um really understand how this all works, I have one-on-one consultations set up, guys. All you have to do is send me an email with your name and a short description of what you're going through, and we will get it all planned out. And um, I'll give you a great way to sit down and actually learn this. So, with that being said, guys, I will see you in the next video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Peace.